So hi, everyone. My name is Nicole Pollard. I'm residency coordinator here at Leeway Foundation. I use she or they pronouns, and I also want to provide a visual description for folks on the call who might need that, particularly if you're blind or low vision. I'm a Black biracial woman with short curly hair. I'm wearing a black shirt today. I have my gold hoop earrings on. Again, I'm really happy that you all are here to learn more about this still fairly new opportunity and answer any questions that you might have. I'm also joined by my lovely colleague, Melissa Hamilton, who's Leeway's Deputy Director. And so, Melissa, I want to hand it over to you for a moment to introduce yourself.
Hey, folks, welcome tonight. Happy to be here with you. Melissa Hamilton is my name. I use she, her pronouns. I am, for folks who may need a visual description, I am a fat white woman. I've got these octagonal glasses on that are gold rimmed. My hair is kind of sprayed up in a pompadour right now and buzzed on the sides. And to my chagrin, I'm in a blazer today, and I'm never in a blazer. So this is not how you'll see me out in these streets. You're just getting my my funeral wear today. So, but really happy to be here with you all tonight. Thanks, Nicole.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. We're also really, really excited to be joined by 2023 Media Artist and Activist Residency Awardee, the exceptional Gabrielle Patterson. Gabrielle, would you like to share your name, pronouns, and artistic practice?
Hi, everybody. Gabrielle here. Glad to be with you all today. I use she, her pronouns. You said artistic practice. Was there anything else?
Okay. Artistic practice.
Okay, thanks. So my artistic practice, mainly or at least my background is in animation and illustration. I have been getting more recently into documentary video, like live action documentary video. And yeah, always just trying to learn new things or interested in learning different mediums. And right now, I just signed up for a printmaking class, a woodblock printmaking class. So I'd like to incorporate that into my practice eventually. And I am a member of Bonfire Media Collective. We say that we create or we tell human stories that catalyze social change. So we work with a lot of organizations that are concerned with different issues related to social justice, public advocacy. We're doing a lot of work around climate justice more recently, and mass incarceration, toxic prison environments, so abolitionist focused sorts of projects. And yeah, just always interested in learning new things and learning from you all. So excited to be here today.
Awesome, thank you so much. All of that sounds very Leeway aligned, I must say. Before we officially dive in, I just also want to make sure that I let everyone know that at any point in the conversation, you can absolutely drop questions in the chat, where myself or Melissa will address them as best we can intermittently throughout our talk today. And you can also always reach out to us directly with any questions at info@leeway.org, or even to my personal email, or not personal, but my work email, that goes directly to me, which is npollard@leeway.org. We also have some upcoming applicant support sessions. So if you get all the information that you need today about the grant in general, but have specific questions about your application, those applicant support sessions will be happening in the next several weeks, and you can register via our Eventbrite. We're dropping that into the chat right now. So to start, I just want to give us a kind of quick overview of who Leeway is and what we do at Leeway Foundation. We are an organization that supports women, trans, and/or gender nonconforming artists and cultural producers and practitioners living in the greater Philadelphia area. And these folks are working at the intersection of art, culture, and social change. Through our grant making, we work in service of social justice movements, by moving money and seeking to recognize these artists whose work are or is often ignored, silenced, and or marginalized because of what they create or who they are. This is people of color, immigrants, queer folks, trans folks, gender nonconforming folks, poor and working class people, and people who take risks in the form of art and content to share their social change vision. This is reduced, kind of to the greater Philadelphia area, and we name that as the Bucks County, Camden County, Chester County, Delaware, and Montgomery and Philadelphia counties in terms of who actually we fund. And usually our grants are just for individual artists, but this opportunity, the Media Artist and Activist Residency, is this unique opportunity that we offer that is going towards a collaboration between a media artist and a social justice or cultural organization. So it's pretty exciting that this is something that we can now offer. And so I also want to reiterate that our grants are for women and trans folks. Leeway is a trans-affirming organization committed to gender self-determination. So when we use the word trans, we use it in the most inclusive sense, more as an umbrella term for anyone whose gender identity or expression is non-conforming and or is different than their gender assigned at birth. And one thing I feel like is often kind of a misconception is we don't make the decisions at Leeway. Every grant opportunity that we have is made by a rotating peer panel of community-based artists, of cultural producers that make these decisions through a consensus-based process. And we usually invite folks from the Philly area to also folks more nationally based, et cetera, depending on the grant that you're applying for. We always try to make sure that there's a nice rounded out panel. And as best we can, we try to be as we refer to it, the gentler, kinder, and more supportive foundation. And so that's why we really, it's important to us to offer multiple info sessions like this one, as well as those applicant support sessions that I mentioned, because we really want to support you in this process. So please come to us with your questions, whether it be now or later on. And applications, are translated in both English and Spanish. So if that's something that you need support with as well, please let us know. And finally, the most important thing I think about our process is making sure that we give you all feedback. So whether or not your application is successful, you will get feedback from the panel so that you can basically, make improvements on whatever you've applied with one round and try again in the future, because again, that panel is going to change. There's different people making decisions. So that way you can really understand, for this thing that you put all this time and energy in, why you actually got a yes or a no decision. So moving along, I want to get into more detail around how we define art for social change. At Leeway, we're really looking at the intersections of art and social change, but I think oftentimes that can kind of be confusing in terms of what we actually mean by that. And so art for social change is art that has a vision and an intentional analysis. It's a vision that impacts not just a few individuals, but communities for that particular change. So essentially, if your art has a community impact that ripples beyond you and just a few folks in your immediate circle, that's what we mean. As you think about this residency, you can ask yourself, how does this art create action? Like, what is the what now that happens after your work is completed? It can raise consciousness. It can be a tool or a strategy for organizing and movement building. It can challenge various oppressions like racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, et cetera. Or maybe it's creating space for expression and community or reclaiming traditional cultural practices. It can be so much more than that, but these are just a few examples. On page 2 of the MAR guidelines in particular, we'll actually, we break that down in more detail. And so you can find that in the PDF links on our website, which we'll also drop into the chat. Let me copy it now. So you can refer to that in a little bit more detail. So before I talk about the specifics about this residency, Gabrielle, I want to invite your voice into the mix. Is there anything you think people should know just generally about Leeway?
I think that part that you said about being a kinder, I don't know, was it kinder, gentler
Yeah.
version of yeah, some of these like funding organizations. I have to say that like my experience with Leeway has always been really encouraging and really yeah, just really supportive. And that I definitely just like encourage people to go for this if they're interested in this residency. I definitely received a lot of encouragement from Melissa, and having I wasn't exactly sure like what I wanted to do first going into this, or like thinking about the process of applying. And I think through that encouragement, it kind of opened up my mind to just like, okay, let me really think about this. Let me take the time to figure out like what might work for me. And then also just being a like being one of the media artist and activist residency recipients. There is a lot of support from the Leeway staff. If you have questions or you need to connect with different people who might have an expertise that you don't have, or you want to learn about something new, or you want to like promote different events or things that that you're doing as a part of your residency, Leeway is here to like support that as a whole, what you're doing, and beyond the residency itself is it's like a big community of people. So yeah, I think Leeway is great.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your words there. Sandra, I want to acknowledge, I see your question in the chat. I definitely want to get to it, but I'm going to lift it up when we get to thinking about the collaborating organizations application. But yes, also what Melissa said in the chat. So starting with an overview of the residency, the Media Artists and Activists residency is an opportunity that provides grants of $25,000. And so this is split to go with 15,000 to the artist, that's unrestricted, and 10,000 to the collaborating organization, with 50% of that needing to go to the project, the other can go to operational support. And so this is, again, of course, like Leeway, it's supporting women, trans, and or gender nonconforming media artists working in close collaboration with a social justice or cultural organization to document, reframe, and or amplify the issues and campaigns addressed by the organization. The residency is all about showcasing the ways that artists and artistic processes can basically work within these organizations to achieve social change. Media artists and organizations apply together. So there's an application for artists, there's an application for organizations, with a proposal for a project that embeds the media artist in the work of the organization for a little over 1 year. Typically, there are 3 to 4 residencies awarded. We've actually had 5 in the past couple of years. Again, with 15,000 to the artist, 10,000 to the organization. This year's deadline is June 24th, 11:59 p.m. So it's like, you know, a little less than a month now to still dream about possibilities and talk with possible collaborators and, of course, apply. So also this means that you might get inspired by other media artists doing amazing work with organizations like Gabrielle. So Gabrielle, I want to invite you in again to maybe talk about what you received the residency for and the media practice that's at the core of that project.
Okay, so I wrote down like the short summary from my application, if that works, or at least to start off with. So I wrote in my application, I will focus on building relationships with the neighbors of the People's Kitchen Gardens to learn about their food traditions and the impact that the gardens have on them. Through the use of surveys and interviews, I will create an 8 to 10 minute mixed media video piece that will be screened at a harvest community dinner in the gardens. And I will also create illustrated and short form video content for social media, disseminating knowledge about gardening, sustainable agriculture, and food traditions. So there's a few different pieces to this project. as a whole, and like the main one being this longer video that that I'm working on, where I'm meeting a lot of neighbors right now and talking to people around in Southwest Philly that are around the gardens that the People's Kitchen stewards. And the People's Kitchen is an organization that's like, they have a kitchen based in South Philly, where they give out food every day to people, and they make delicious meals for people in different like organizations every day. But then there's also gardens that they have in like the King's Sessing, Elmwood area. And I've been volunteering there since last year. And I got like really into volunteering and wanted to figure out like how can I partner with them. When I thought about this project, I thought that they would be like a great organization to partner with. So there's a lot of people from all different cultural backgrounds who live in the area, and there are also people who are gardening now who live in South Philly that are refugees from Myanmar or Burma. There's Karen folks, and they're like gardening at these gardens as well. So there's like a lot of I'm hoping that there can be like a lot of cross-cultural sharing and connection there, and that like this project and talking to people, learning more about their food traditions, doing different art and like storytelling projects together, that we can learn a lot from each other. So that's what I have in mind for that. And at the end of this, having a video that we can show at a big harvest dinner, and like have lots of food and fun times with people in the neighborhood. Yeah, so that's the main idea for the project.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, and I know we briefly touched base in the check-in, and you were sharing that this new community has kind of emerged, and that expands the story in such a way. So I think that's exciting that you're able to be flexible enough in terms of the parameters of this residency to welcome in those stories. So thank you. So talking a little bit more now about social change intents, this is something that is kind of a piece of all of our applications, but social change intents are an area of the application where we ask you to select a social change intent or vision so that we can better understand what social issue your work seeks to address and create action around. And so you're asked to identify at least one, but no more than 3 of these categories to best describe the intent or the vision behind your project. And so these includes all that you see following or on this slide: cultural preservation, decarceration, demilitarization, disability justice, economic justice, environmental justice, feminism, immigrant justice, indigenous sovereignty, housing justice, LGBTQA social movements, racial justice, and then we separate out transgender justice and gender self-determination. And so we don't use these intentions, or we don't define these intentions, I should say, for you, but really hope that when selecting them, you can have some space within your application to really self-define, what either of these intents specifically means to you and your work. In particular, question 3 is when you can really elaborate on this. And this is where you'll be asked, in question 3, this is where you'll be asked how your art will create action around the social change intents that you selected. So you're really able to elaborate on those selections in that question. So we really encourage you to be thoughtful about what you choose here, as because that will kind of create the general framework or kind of conceptual themes that then the panel will be looking to have be, kind of consistent as a through line throughout your application. So I'm curious, Gabrielle, what were your social change intents and how did you talk about them in your application?
So my social change intents, I selected cultural preservation, environmental justice, and racial justice. So cultural preservation in being that food is a huge part of that. Agricultural traditions are a huge part of that. And I think a lot is as far as in like American society, mainstream American society, and kind of like the Western culture that I've grown up in, I was not exposed to like farming or really like gardening that much in depth. Like my grandma was super into that, and she's from the Caribbean, but like into gardening at least. But like I didn't really have a sense of, oh, this is something that you can get really deep into. This is like a career that people can have. This is something where you can really like, grow food and make a life for yourself around like creating for yourself and your community. So I think there's a lot there to like learn from each other, from people of different cultures who live in Southwest Philly, that can bring their traditional practices or their own ways of growing food or cooking food, and being able to share that with each other, especially with the Karen farmers. And I've just gotten to meet like one of the people who's Nado, who's like she's, I guess, one of the community leaders and is really well versed in farming. But there's so many like stories just within that of like how moving from place to place, how they've been able to preserve their culture in different in different ways, when like they didn't have, let's say, the food or the tools, that the heat, the fire, whatever was needed to like create the food that they were used to eating, but still being able to do that. I think there's there's so much there to learn. So I'm excited to talk to her more about that. Environmental justice for, growing food. You have to think about the land that you're on, and how we are keeping that in a state where it's possible to grow, where it's possible to grow things, where we're not contaminating the lands. Like I was talking to a neighbor the other day who's really passionate about air quality and about soil contamination, and about all the auto shops that are like in Southwest Philly. She told me like in 10-block radius or something, there were 300 auto shops. I don't know how that's possible, but like she's super passionate about that, and how like the auto shops are contaminating the water and the land. So all of these things definitely play a part when you're thinking about growing food in Philadelphia. Like how do you make sure that it's safe to do that when there's all sorts of chemicals that can be underground, and different heavy metals and things. And then racial justice. We all know that there's not enough good access to food, healthy food, a variety of food, nutritious food, in many neighborhoods in Philadelphia and around the country. And that's by design, not just that, it just happened to be that way. So people have the access to be able to grow their own food, and to be interested in that, and be able to demystify that more, and be able to like, take the space to empty lots or wherever it is, like be able to feel that they have that agency to do that, and create something for their community. That's super huge. So that's what I'm trying to support with this project.
Thank you, Gabrielle, for giving that context, and that how these 3 social change intents that you selected were woven together in such a way. So in moving along, we'll talk about collaboration, which is like, collaboration is core, as the slide is called. This is like the biggest part of this opportunity. Is we don't want this to just be a production grant. It's not just money to go and make a project, but or for the media artists alone, but this is really about collaboration. And so the collaboration should be an active, mutually beneficial partnership between both the artist and the organization. So there's more information specifically about collaboration on page 6 of the guidelines. But before applying, artists and organizations should connect and make sure that a few things align. Like, do you all have a shared vision with a clearly agreed upon mission, objectives, and strategies? Are you able to hold understanding and respect for each other and your respective work? Do you both share a stake in the process and the outcome of the project? Do you understand how community stakeholders and the general public will be engaged, and are you, on the same page about that? And most importantly, like communication. Communication needs to be frequent and clear in terms of expectations, needs, and updates. And for any successful collaboration to for people to really truly be able to work together, you have to be able to be willing to be flexible, to compromise, to discuss issues openly and navigate disagreements if needed. And so we actually have an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, that's actually required to submit once you receive the grant, so that we can really know that there is a kind of guiding document to help you all move through the collaboration. And so, keeping that in mind, collaborations need to be sincere. So this isn't just here to do the organization's bidding or vice versa. This isn't about one party or the other. This should really be, thinking about an artist as a strategist and not just an independent contractor or, some other capacity. And so as I mentioned earlier, there are 2 applications, one for the artist, one for the organization. We've already linked those in the chat. And so that will kind of ask about a little bit more details about the partnership from each party's perspective. So Gabrielle, throwing it back to you, can you share some details about your collaboration with People's Kitchen? Did you already have a connection with them before applying? I know you kind of mentioned that a little bit, that you were intrigued by the work that they did.
Yeah, so I started volunteering with the People's Kitchen at the Gardens in April of 2023. I had heard of them before, but I had found out about the Gardens when I like volunteered with Amber Art in design on a mural painting project that was like by the Gardens. And then there was like they were kind of doing an event similar to what we want to do with like the harvest dinner idea that we have. But it was like a big kind of neighborhood cookout day. So there were a lot of people over there. There's tons of food. So we had finished like painting the wall and stuff, and then went over to eat. And then I ended up chatting with Ben, who is one of the co-founders of the People's Kitchen, and Ben Miller. And yeah, I think I talked to him a little bit, and then maybe like saw him here and there. And I thought, oh yeah, I asked like, oh, what are like the volunteer days or something, but I couldn't do anything for like a year. So when I finally had some time to volunteer last year, I was excited. I went over there because it was just like 10 blocks from my house, and like walked down there. I took the trolley and volunteered the first day, and I like kept coming back every couple of weeks to volunteer. And so when I had heard about this residency before and gone to one of the info sessions, but I didn't have like any ideas that previous year. But then last year, I was like, okay, let me actually try this, because this seems like an amazing opportunity. And I have ideas, so let me actually try. And I never applied for a grant before, so this is very new to me. But like I said, Melissa and the other people that I met ended up going to an info session at North Square Neighborhood Project. And that's when I thought of like, oh, I've been volunteering at a garden myself, and I'm in this beautiful community garden up in North Philly. Like maybe there's something that I could do with the gardens that I've been volunteering at. So I definitely was inspired by the place I was in. I think you all showed on the slides before Anula Shetty's work with North Square Neighborhood Project. So that's somebody I'd actually love to talk to as well. And as far as like with the People's Kitchen, yeah, I just got super into gardening. I was like gardening a lot at my house too, in my front yard, and really enjoying that. And so it just felt really important to me. Like, I am getting a lot of satisfaction out of this. I'm learning so much. I feel more like alive and like I can create something for myself too, like just being able to grow my own food, that I wanted to be able to share that more. And as far as this collaboration, it's definitely, I definitely feel like I'm in that role of a strategist with the People's Kitchen. Ben and I talk a lot, and he definitely looks to me and values my opinion about like different options of how to of like outreach about the gardens, or different events that we might want to do, or different collaborations with other organizations and things like that. Just like thinking about how things can be more, or how we can better integrate things, get the word out about the gardens, make sure that people are more informed and get to be more involved, who live in the neighborhood. So yeah, it's been pretty cool so far.
Yes, I love that. And I definitely could tell in my brief check-in with you two that you talk, communication is there. I also love that the opportunity or the idea of working with them kind of snuck up on you. And so I just want to, add kind of a little kind of anecdote here that, it might be an organization that you have a pre-existing relationship with, it might not be, and both are okay. But maybe, you could be similar, like in Gabrielle's case, and it might be already an organization that you have a relationship with that you might not have immediately considered. But yeah, thank you for that response. And so before actually I pivot into artist eligibility, I do actually maybe want to just make sure I verbally answer Sandra, even though Melissa kind of dropped something in the chat. I would like to be as best of a matchmaker as I can be. I'm only aware of so many organizations, but let's definitely talk and see if there could be something that's good fit. But as Melissa said, the final decision is absolutely up to you. But I hope to get better at that at future years. Okay, so moving along, artist eligibility. I'm going to tell you, about artist eligibility, and then we'll pivot to organizations after this. So to be eligible to apply as an artist, we require that, number one, you're a media artist. And so what we mean by that is that media arts must be at the core of your application. When we're using the term media artist, we mean it really in the most expansive sense. And it's including, but not limited to, film and video, that can be narrative, documentary, and even experimental, audio, podcasts, installation or projection, animation, interactive design, digital art, games and gaming, which we should see more of maybe, web-based content, multimedia and multidisciplinary works, and more. So if you have any questions about what might fall into that category, feel free to reach out. As I mentioned earlier, this is for folks that are living in the counties that we fund, and you're at least 18 years old. You identify as a woman, trans, or gender nonconforming person, of course, and that you are, in fact, working collaboratively with a social justice or cultural organization. So you are not eligible if you don't have a a collaborating organization. Unfortunately, if you're on the staff or board of that organization, that is kind of a conflict of interest there. If you're a full-time student in an arts degree program, if you've received a transformation award last year in 2023, you have to wait another year before applying. Or if you are planning to, or actually the deadline has already passed, if you have applied for the transformation award in 2024, you're also ineligible. And for all leeway opportunities, we want to make sure that you have turned in your final reports from a previous grant or residency, should you have received one from leeway. And so if you haven't gotten that in, make sure to get that in to be eligible. And so I'm curious, Gabrielle, what inspired you to apply? I know that you said that this is your first, grant application, your first time applying for money, and it can be a huge and sometimes really scary process for folks. And so anything you have to share in terms of that inspiration?
So I guess like the kind of the final push to actually apply, I talked a bit about with with encouragement from folks at Leeway, other friends that I have, and who, you know, maybe sent me the media artist and activist residency like application or information, like, hey, you should take a look at this. And also, I mean, me bringing this up to Ben from the People's Kitchen and him being like, oh yeah, I'm totally on board with this. So that was a big part of it too, of like, that he's really open to different ideas and very creative as well. And that I had never applied for a grant before residency, and I wanted to like take a chance on myself and try something new, and that I wanted to make sure that I was giving more attention to my own personal art practice, where I was doing like a lot of commercial work for a while, and I work with a video production co-op on Fire Media Collective, and like do my own freelance projects and things, but like having something that kind of felt like my own separate project. I was excited about that possibility to be able to give that concerted time. And yeah, and then just more excuse to garden. So so many different parts. And yet pushing myself to like try new mediums and like try things that I've been wanting to do with my own art. So yeah, there's a lot of different reasons. But I'm glad that I tried and I went for it.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
Thanks.
Just getting to some questions in the chat. If I don't live locally in Philadelphia, would I be explicitly ineligible to apply? So again, the regions that we fund are not just within the city limits of Philadelphia, but in the surrounding counties as well. So if you live in Bucks County, Camden County, Chester County, Delaware, Montgomery, or Philadelphia, you will be eligible. Otherwise, unfortunately, you're ineligible. Yes, in the beginning, I expressed that 50% of the collaborating organizations funds would go towards the project, and the other 50% could go towards operational support. The artist is unrestricted funds. So moving along, at looking specifically at the artist application, I just want to give you all an idea of what it looks like. So we're just going to ask for some basic information, contact information, etc., an experience page. And so this is really unique to Leeway in that we don't ask, for a resume or something like a formal CV or anything like that. It's really asking you to reflect on 4 to 10 personal, professional, and/or political experiences that really drove you to work in the way that you do as an artist today. So it's not just for you to recreate your CV or your resume here. We want to have some, some personal experiences. Hello. So some personal experiences in there too. So essentially, we're looking for things that over the course of your life have shaped you into the artist that you are today, experiences that have led you to this work. And so that can be like, I remember when I was, sitting on the floor of my father's studio, watching him work. And then that really inspired me, to do similar things. And this is just, an example. But we really encourage you to think, deeply about what you want to include there. Gabrielle, what was the experience that you had creating an experience page? How did you decide what you wanted to include in your timeline?
Yeah, I was thinking about this. I cannot fully remember the process, but I know I had a lot of, I spent a good amount of time just like going through, I guess like my resume, just going through projects, like looking in my own folders and thinking about, oh, is this like a project, or on my own website, and just like kind of like going through each project and thinking about it. Is this something that I want to include? I included a variety of different kinds of projects and work experience. So some of them were, I included like collaborative projects, a past public art installation piece that I did, my work as a full-time motion designer at a creative agency in Philly, my freelance work, my experience as a worker owner of Bonfire Media Collective, and a presentation and panel that I did at Ramapo College of New Jersey. And I feel like, oh yeah, and I think I feel like a big thing for me, even though it was like a short period of time, was when like kind of at the beginning of Monument Lab becoming a thing. And this is in 2017. I think they were formed in maybe like 2015 or something. But there was a citywide art exhibition where there were pieces of art that were like public pieces of art around the city in different parks. And I was a lab manager at Washington Square Park in the Center City. And I feel like that was a pretty important experience for me because I had to talk to a lot of strangers, and ask people about what kind of monuments they wanted to see in the city, ask them about what was important to them, what they thought about public art and monuments and all sorts of different things. So I feel like that was really helpful with me kind of like putting myself out there and being able to talk to people from different backgrounds and have a little bit of confidence going up to a random person. And like for this project, just getting to know people who are in the neighborhood. And sometimes it's like, we haven't really talked at all. I don't know if they're going to be interested in the work that we're doing or not. Sometimes I already know that they are, but just having that experience, I think, was important to me for a number of different reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. And so beyond the experience page, you'll be asked these 6 questions that are listed here, which I'll allow you to read on your own as well as on the application. And then we just ask for 2 work samples that can be video, image, or audio, or text-based, whatever illustrates your work as an artist best. Moving along, just because I want to be conscious of time and make sure we have enough time for questions at the end, I'm going to move into collaborating organization eligibility. So these are social justice or cultural organizations with a 501c3 status, or an organization that is fiscally sponsored by one. And so I think social justice orgs are pretty clear. We know these as grassroots organizations, protesters on the ground, organizations like the Philadelphia Community Bail Fund, Asian Americans United, Juntos, Philly Thrive, etc. But there's more nuance when it comes to cultural organizations. And so what we tried to do is actually, define cultural organization as an org that still has a social justice intention as a part of its mission and works with communities that are often ignored, silenced, or marginalized because of who they are. And so how social justice might be at the core of your organization is really what we're looking for versus an arts presenting organization. And so we're really more than happy to talk to you about whether or not the organization that you are interested in collaborating with, or if you are that representative from the organization and you want to be clear on if you are eligible or not, let's talk. Feel free to reach out to us via email. We can always set up a time. Again, these organizations have to be based within the counties that we fund, working with an operating budget that's less than 1.5 million, and of course, collaborating with a media artist. So the things that make an organization ineligible is if you don't have a collaborating media artist, if you're, again, if that media artist is a part of your staff or board of your organization, and if your operating budget is above or greater than 1.5 million. So the application for the organizations is fairly similar, but there's different questions. And so again, we're asking for basic information. And then we have 5 questions about the role of the organization in the residency. Again, I'll let you all read those questions on your own, as well as just look at the application on your own. And then we asked to have, instead of work samples, just documentation verifying that the organization is a 501c3 org or is fiscally sponsored. So I would like to maybe, let's see. I'd like to, I think I'm going to pivot to questions. So feel free to raise a hand, drop a question in the chat. Otherwise, I can ask more questions of Gabrielle, or even if you have questions for Gabrielle, feel free to ask, whether or not it's directed to Liwei or our lovely guest grantee. Yes, Ahmed.
Hi, thank you so much. This is super helpful. I asked one question about students, but also another question. So I assume that applies both to undergraduates and graduate students who might be in full-time programs. We are considering partnering with an artist who is in an MFA in photography program, but we are not entirely sure if that would be ineligible or not, or whether particulars of their program matters for the eligibility aspect.
Just that they are enrolled in an arts-based program is what matters. If they're a student enrolled in another program, that's okay. It's really just art-based programs.
So thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Laura, next.
Hey, oh, sorry, I always forget how to lower the hand. The resident, like the related experiences, the 4 to 10, just to clarify, how related to the proposal or this particular partnership should they be, or is it just to kind of get a bigger picture of you as an artist, or you working in community, or? And then the work samples, it sounded like they should be a little bit more related, but I just wanted to clarify too.
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. I would say because both pieces are a part of the artist application, it's really an opportunity to get to know the media artist better. And so I think if, should you have a pre-existing with the organization that feels like a relevant and meaningful experience to include on that page, by all means do so. But otherwise, it's not required for that to feel, directly related to the project. Although, should you choose, for example, social change intents around racial justice, just to use that as an example, and how speaking about how those social change intents that you choose almost act as this through line throughout your application. And so you might want to, in addition to how you answer the application questions, think about how that through line, that social change intent, also is demonstrated in that experience page. So I would think about it more in terms of framing it around that concept or theme than the residency in particular. If that makes sense. And then in terms of the work samples, these are, again, these are trying to demonstrate your work as an artist best. And so I think, we definitely don't want to eliminate someone interested in experimenting with a medium that they haven't worked with before. And so, say you want to go into podcasting, but previously you've only worked in film. I don't think that will necessarily, work against you, as long as you can make the case for, having experience with equipment that still involves sound. And, I think it's all about the story that you want to tell, and allowing your work samples to continue to tell a story, beyond your application, whether or not they're, directly related to that project, is okay. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you. Yeah.
And Lori.
Thanks. Thank you. How is the money handled? Do you send the money directly to the collaborating organizations? So you're giving two separate checks, and then do they have to then turn in a report at the end as well?
Yes. So 2 checks will be made. One actually of 14,000, because we hold 1,000 back to the artist. and then one of 9,000 to the organization, again, holding 1,000 back. And so that final $1,000 for each parties will be distributed after the receipt of the final report. And both, just like the artist and the collaborating organization both have to submit applications, there are also 2 different final reports to complete as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will hold up. I'm sorry, I'm just chiming in here as Melissa. I will hold up that we've cut payments in different ways as it works for artists and organizations, but traditionally it is what Nicole explained. So just FYI, we had you know, sometimes younger folks apply and they're like, my taxes, you know, but grant income is taxable income, and so think about that as you apply. I just always encourage folks to think about it. And I'll answer this question from Uriah in the chat too. Is there a budget form to submit? There is no budget as part of this residency. We are asking a lot already, so we don't need a budget. We'll leave that up to you and your collaborator.
Thank you for chiming in, Melissa. Always appreciate your insight there. And I see, Mina, you have a question. Do you accept a work in progress as a sample, specifically if it is a part of a larger multi-year research project? Yes, I think, you know, as long as it's just the work sample and not necessarily the project, but I would say same thing maybe goes in terms of how we frame talking about a particular project. It might be beneficial to you to speak about that sample as a particular phase in such a way that it feels like it's its own, especially if this is a larger project. You know, you can still give the overview, but maybe highlight how that piece kind of stands on its own, I think might make it strongest.
Yeah, the work samples really matter, folks. Like your answers really matter, no doubt. There's intentionality in that, but really the work samples matter. And so be really thoughtful about what those 2 samples convey, whether they're connected to your social change intents or whether they illustrate that you're an animator or a filmmaker or a podcaster. So really be choosy about what you share.
Any other questions? All right. If they still come to you, feel free to raise a hand or drop them in the chat. I also just want to be conscious of time and that we're getting a little bit to the end. So Melissa has just dropped in the Eventbrite once again to sign up for one-on-one applicant support sessions. Again, now that you have the kind of general overview information about the opportunity, if you want to get specific, you know, questions answered about the possible residency that you'd like to apply for, maybe you've even begun to fill out your application and you'd like us to look at it and step through it together, let's do that. Sign up for a session. We have both virtual and in-person sessions available. We'll be in person at Asian Arts Initiative this year. Really looking forward to that. I want to, in closing, just send so much love and appreciation to you, Gabrielle, for setting aside this time to share your experience with folks. I want to make sure to lift up contact information again. You can reach out to me or Melissa via our emails or the info@leeway.org. And yeah, I think that's it for now, but we'd love to hear what you're dreaming up. We'd love to support you in any way that we can. So thank you so much for joining us.
Bye,
Yay.
folks. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.